In our series on GPET, that is geopolitical environment, economic, technical, social, we will today look at a very complex topic, economics of war, conflict, and peace in, let's take Palestine, which is now raging, and Ukraine, which is raging but kind of has slowed down. It is not a stalemate, as President Zelensky just said it yesterday, but it has become lower level of conflict. As far as Palestine is concerned, from mid-30s, low intensity, that is 1930s, low intensity conflict has been going on, which flared up in 47, 48. Palestinians call it Nakba. And now the conflict which has arisen is being called Nakba 2. So we will look at Nakba 2 because now it has become modern technological war, more with rockets and airplanes and so on, and not so much on the ground. While the war in Ukraine is kind of traditional, along with the rockets and air fight has not been there much, and the ground war with the tanks and armored vehicles and high capacity rifles and guns and machine guns and so on. So the level of technology has gone up. See, historically speaking, World War I and World War II were the major wars in terms of the number of countries involved. It was kind of global, though mostly European, and but it did impact the rest of the world. So that's why they were called World War II. These are local conflicts, local within a country. Ukraine is mostly local, but you can say it is extended to Russia. So next level, therefore, is regional war, and then the global war. Global parties can be involved. Similarly, the economic effect is certainly in that particular country, though sometimes parts of the country are involved, for example, Eritrea and Ethiopia, Yemen, South Yemen, North Yemen. And here also, basic impact is in case of Palestine in the Gaza Strip and maybe, hopefully not though, maybe in the West Bank. And if the war spills over or the impacts of that spill over to Jordan, where it is expected already that number of Palestinians is more than the Jordanians, or in Egypt, where also number of Palestinians is in millions, or in Lebanon, where also in the southern Lebanon, it is now dominated by the Palestinians. And if it spills over, therefore, Syria next door, and maybe Iran supporting Houthis in Yemen, or indirect support to Hezbollah, which some people say is sponsored by them, and the other Arab countries somehow coming to the help of these people, then it is a regional war, and the impact of the war is therefore more regional. However, the economies have got kind of interlinked. Ukraine is a very major producer of the wheat and sunflower oil and rapeseed oil and barley, and exports it to many countries. Now, and we will basically do the assessment as to what the impact has been on the wheat exports because of the war. Then it affects the economies elsewhere. It affects the costs elsewhere. So the wheat from and other food grains from Ukraine go to Europe and to Africa. So because of the war, because of the logistics getting disturbed, and the agreement of Black Sea Grain Initiative not working, the impact on the prices is there, and that is empirical. How much has been there, and then there is a food security problem in um, the African countries, especially sub-Saharan countries. The sheer availability of sunflower oil, which has got affected. India imports a lot. Rapeseed oil imports a lot. Affects the edible oil situation because we are short of edible oil and we import a lot from Ukraine. And third is the fertilizers connected to that. Ukraine and Russia both export a lot of fertilizers, and we import India, other countries too. And the fertilizer prices therefore gone up. There is therefore impact on the agriculture productivity and the subsidies in India. So that is a cost which has got incurred because of the war. And tomorrow, if the um, shipments are smooth, then that cost will not be incurred. Therefore, it is a cost specific to the war. Now, in most cases, the belligerent party don't accept it to be war. Um, Ukraine and its supporters call it terrorist action on part of Russian Federation, and Russia says it's a special military operation to protect the Russian-speaking, Russian ethnic persons, especially in the eastern Ukraine, and they have gone after a lot of notices and so on, and proposals and the treaties that they were not protected and they were under pressure, they were under physical threat and so on, and hence and their culture was being obliterated, and hence they call it a special military operation. As far as the recent Palestinian thing is concerned, October 23, the Hamas has not said anything. What operation they've done, they've not done. Um, Western media has again called it a terrorist action. And those like Turkey, who support the Palestinian cause, they say that they are freedom fighters and they have been pressurized. They are in an occupied territory, and therefore, since no ameliorative action has been taken, they are refugees in their own country, and even within that, they are treated like second-class citizens. They are not treated as human beings, as Minister of the Israeli government called them that they are not human beings, and they are below human beings, and they have reacted to it. All we know is that Mr. Netanyahu, who the Prime Minister of Israel for a long time now, since 2000 almost, called it that we are in a state of war. So it is a one-sided state of war. Now, as far as economic impact is concerned, we have to look into these situations and then look at the economic impact. Now, that is one way is to look at what the human cost is, which is very, very unfortunate, whatever it is. And whichever human life is lost is economic. And therefore, both sides should be considered. So let's take Ukraine. Ukraine, the estimates vary because neither of the parties has given a specific number themselves. But the estimates, 1,000 to 500,000 Ukrainians may have died. And the normal situation is parameter of 1 is to 3. So about a million people are affected. So we will not exactly say it's 350,482 or something like that. Order of magnitude will do that about a million people have died or wounded. Because the wounded also kind of get out of your economic activities, and therefore there's an impact on economic activities. And these numbers have to be seen in the context of what the populations are. And go to the next step, we have to see what is the population of young people and young men mostly, which is there. So now, in case of Ukraine, so if a million people are affected, those 600,000 or so would need to be taken care of. That means there is that much additional load on the medical systems and so on. And of course, they have to be supported. They are the veterans of war. And in a population where about 3 million to 4 million estimated youngsters have gone out, again mostly men, um, young men. Um, they have emigrated, they have left the country. So about 3 to 4 million of those people would have been taken out of the economic activity in a population of 20 million, working population maybe 10 million. So that means it's a substantial one. It's about half of the working population gets. And then about half a million, maybe 300,000 to half a million persons are on the call. They are reservists. They have, and of course, Ukraine is finding that very difficult. So it is beginning to realize on the outside forces, just like USSR, or rather Russia, has relied on Wagner forces. So it seems certain Gorkha regiments are also there now, and people from other parts of the world who are there in the Ukraine side. So that is a human cost. A very, very unfortunate. In a small country, so many people died. Second is immediately the cost on the infrastructure. Now there are estimates available. 3 months ago, there was a big conference attended by the Prime Minister and the Treasury Minister, Finance Minister of UK, and they estimated on an average about $750 billion, which will be required for the reconstruction. Now let's go to one step further. There is a cost of the armed equipment, so on and so forth, and most of it, in case of Ukraine, has been given by the NATO forces, especially the US. The US forces, US amounts are available because they have to be approved in the Congress, and the current proposal for now coming year, 23-24, is $106 billion for Ukraine, uh, Palestine, and Taiwan. So we can kind of place it at about 70 to 80 billion dollars. We can take a lower estimate, $70 billion. And last year's experience is that whatever USA has given, Europe put together has given about a similar amount. So we can call it $140 billion. And then there is a Ukraine Aid Club, uh, which is handled by the Defense Secretary of the US. About 50 odd members are there. And so let's put another 10, 50, 10, $15 billion. So now these are broad estimates just to get a feel that $250 billion worth of military aid per year is being given. So, and $750 billion worth of infrastructure has got destroyed. So that makes it $1 trillion. That's almost equal to the GDP of Ukraine. Take the second element. What has happened to the GDP of Ukraine? Uh, this 1 year framework, the World Bank figures are that 22% negative growth is there as far as GDP is concerned. So we are talking another quarter of a trillion, I'm sorry, $250 billion. So $1.25 trillion has been the loss in the last, let's say, 12 months or even 18 months, if you put it. That is the economic cost. Now, tomorrow, if there is peace, then there will be no additional destruction. There will be the economy which will reconstruct all that infrastructure which is lost. So the economic activity will go on. And that's what happened after World War II. USA was intact as far as the physical destruction was concerned. There was no fight on the US soil. And so they were almost the monopoly, the hegemon. So they helped with the Marshall Plan to lift up the Europe. And with that economic activity, the skill sets were still there. They had a loss of force. They, Europe, USSR, and other theaters of war in Africa and all put together had 10 million lives lost, and again 20 million or so wounded. At that time, they were less wounded because people were allowed to die, which is not so simple now because of media and other things, and of course medical facilities are better. Now, so what we're looking at is that if Ukraine continues to do this, Russia continues to do it. Russia has given many times indication that they are interested in ceasefire and closing the issue. The peace plans have come from China, from African Union, um, and Arabs to cool it down. Why Arabs also get involved and all that is because the movement of various things get affected. For example, Black Sea, the movement of oil is affected. And any time if there is a complete blockage somewhere, like Suez Canal or elsewhere, then um, then um, um, then the oil movement will be affected. So the oil industry will get affected. So there are certain industries which are quite sensitive to it. I have already mentioned about the agriculture. Ukraine has had Ukraine conflict. I use the word. I don't use the word war because nobody has declared that war. And that's the movement of the grains and fertilizer, wheat, other food grains, oils, edible oils, etc. Has got affected. We will come and make the assessment in Palestine uh, because of the current conflict. So closing that, there have been a number of proposals, but they have not been picked up. Now, interestingly, Europe has not given a peace proposal. USA has not given a peace proposal, and Ukraine has given a peace proposal, which basically says that Russia should get back from the areas it has entered into, and it should pay for the reparations and all that. Now that is very, very unfortunate, and he has made a condition. If Russia is winning, Russia has taken the territories which it was interested. Its strategic objectives are over. It's not expanding anymore, and the so-called offensive, spring offensive of Ukraine, supported to the hilt by NATO, etc., has meant nothing. It's made no impression at all. Now, on the other hand, the Russian people, some representatives are talking about the counter offensive from their side, calling it the winter offensive because they can do the winter war much better than anybody else. Of course, the condition of the soil, etc., is different. But last couple of months, it is clear that Russia has also reduced its firepower and all that. Now, I look at it slightly from a different point of view to say that if the war today stops, therefore, a loss of potential $1 trillion per year at least gets obviated. And that $1 trillion is a cost to the mostly the Ukraine people. Now, as far as Russia is concerned, uh, very severe restrictions, sanctions have been placed by the US and the Europe, uh, including putting a cap on the price of the oil to $60, while the market price is something like $84 a barrel. So that is a loss which they have incurred, relatively speaking. But if you look at the overall figures, again, World Bank figures and the Ministry of Finance of Russia, then maybe 1 or 2% drop in the GDP is there, or about the same. 1 or 2% drop GDP is there in a number of other European uh, countries also during the last year, um, Germany included, perhaps maximum. So Germany has lost a lot because the pipelines which had been laid by Russia from Siberia to take the oil and the gas, they got bombed by somebody in Europe, and so they have been buying very expensive oil, primarily from USA and from the Middle East. So some people say 3 to 4 times the price. Let's say at least double the price. So that is the net loss to Germany. But not only that, the cost of heating at home goes up. Cost of production of goods which are higher energy in sensitive, especially chemicals, industry, and again fertilizer and aluminum and so on. They're all highly energy intensive, and the regular energy is now mostly produced from non-coal sources. So the oil goes up, the cost of the energy goes up, cost of energy goes up, all the other parts. So we can keep on calculating these, okay, or develop another kind of framework. which now we will apply to, let's say, Palestine. Now, this framework is that look at macro figures only and not go into the details of which sector and all. Those sectors are important for individuals. If the prices are going up in fertilizer industry, then that particular industry is affected and food industry is affected. And the government has to figure out how much more subsidy they will have to give. So on the least, that cost has been about $1 trillion. Now coming to Israel, we can look at the output parameters and macro parameters. We will go through that particular framework. Let's say we take Bloomberg's framework of Bayesian VAR, and which defines that you look at how the war will uh, pan out. Does it remain a very local conflict or it becomes a regional conflict? And so then what will be the impact on GDP? Keeping in mind all the parameters. They look at the impact on GDP to the world now, and not so much at the what we have done. The first approach we have done is that we are looking at the impact in the local economy, that country's economy, maybe in some region of that particular economy. So let's take that particular framework. Thank you very much.